If you had to choose between honor and love, which would you choose? Would you betray the one who raised you for the one who kissed you like the world was ending? Would you leave the law behind for a man whose name makes honest folks spit in the dust? Or would you stay loyal to blood and bury your heart so deep the desert couldn't dig it up? I never thought I'd be the one asking those questions. But life in the West has a way of throwing choices at you when your hands are already full. The year was 1887. The sun over Dry Creek didn't rise, it burned. It blistered the sky like judgment. Dust hung in the air like a secret no one dared speak. Our town was small, tight-knit, and mean as a coiled snake. You could hear the wind whistling through the saloon floorboards and the gossip echoing off the church steps. My name is Caroline Maddox, daughter of Sheriff Silas Maddox, the hardest man I've ever known. A man whose handshake could snap bones and whose stare could still a bar fight. Folks feared him more than they feared sin. And me? I was his only child, the one person he'd ever softened for, or tried to. But even stone don't bend, it cracks. He raised me like a soldier, not a daughter, taught me to shoot straight, ride fast, and never cry where a man could see. But he never taught me what to do when the ache came, that ache that makes you stare out at the horizon and wonder what's past it, that itch behind the ribs that says you weren't made for fences. So I rode. Every day, after chores were done, after the preacher's wife had finished whispering about how I wore my skirts too high or my words too sharp, I saddled up and rode out past the bluffs, where the land opened up and God hadn't quite finished painting yet. That's where I first saw him. It was near the Red Hollow crossing. The sun was melting behind the rocks, the sky a mess of blood and honey. I was letting my horse drink when I spotted him, slumped against a tree, like a man freshly dropped from heaven or dragged up from hell. His shirt was torn, his side was red. He looked like he'd lost more than just blood. I should have turned back. I should have gone to fetch my father. But I didn't, because he looked up, and his eyes didn't plead, they warned. Like a coyote caught in a trap who'd rather bite his own leg off than be helped. But I stepped closer anyway. I don't know why. Maybe it was the way the wind went quiet, like it was holding its breath. Maybe it was the loneliness in his eyes. Or maybe I just needed to do something that was mine, not my father's. "Don't touch me," he rasped. I crouched anyway, tore a strip from my petticoat and pressed it against his side. "Then bleed on someone else's dirt," I whispered. That made him laugh. Not the kind of laugh that lives in happy places, more like something that hadn't been let out in years. He didn't tell me his name, didn't ask mine. But I knew, deep in my bones, I'd just stepped into something I couldn't ride away from. For the next 3 nights, I snuck out. I brought him food, water, clean cloth. His wound was deep, but he was tougher than most men. He refused to lean on me, never thanked me. But every time I came back, he was still there. And that said more than words ever could. He told me little things, that he used to play the fiddle, that he missed his mama's cooking, that he hated the sound of a man begging for his life. That last part stuck with me. On the 4th night, he finally looked me square and said, "You don't know who I am, do you?" I shrugged. "Don't matter. It will." Later that week, I found a wanted poster nailed crooked on the door of the general store. Jesse Klein, alias the Bandit King, 1000, dead or alive. And there it was, the truth hitting me like a spooked horse. I knew what I should have done, what my father would have done, but I also knew how Jesse looked at me, like I was the first clean thing he'd seen in a long time, and how I looked at him, like he was the first wrong thing I didn't want to make right. In Dry Creek, there were only two kinds of love, the kind that stayed quiet and the kind that got you buried. Mine was about to become both. If you had to choose between the truth and the person who makes you feel alive, which would you pick? If you knew the name that made your heart race also made your father reach for his gun, would you run toward it or away? People talk about love like it's clean, like it rides in on a white horse and wears a badge and a Sunday suit. But the love I found out there by the river, it had blood on its hands. And I didn't care. Not enough, anyway. Jesse Klein. That name should have burned a hole straight through my chest when I read it. But all I felt was a strange kind of calm, like when you finally understand a storm is coming and there's no stopping it, only surviving it. He never denied who he was, didn't bother with lies. That night, when I walked up to him with a bundle of stolen gauze and a heart loud as thunder, he just nodded and said, "So, now you know." And I did. I knew he was the man they blamed for the Midland heist, knew he was the reason 4 Union Pacific agents were buried in pinewood boxes, knew he had a bounty high enough to buy my family a second life in the city. But I also knew he flinched when the coyotes howled, that he slept with one eye open but never reached for his gun when I touched him. He was dangerous, but he was also mine. Or maybe I was his. It's hard to tell the difference once you've fallen. I started lying more. To Pa, to the girls in church, to myself. Said I was feeling sick, said I needed air, said I didn't care what the town thought of me because the town didn't know me. But Jesse did. He watched me like I was sunlight in a place that hadn't seen it in years. Said things like, "You ain't like the rest of them," and "You ride like a ghost, silent and full of fire." And I believed him, because when he looked at me, I forgot I was just the sheriff's daughter. I was something more, something wild, something free. One night, when the moon was low and the fire crackled low between us, he told me about his past. Not the kind that makes it into wanted posters, the kind that makes you human. His father used to beat him with the buckle end of a belt. Said it would make him a man. His mother died, birthing a sister who didn't last the winter. He ran off at 15 and never looked back. Learned how to steal before he learned how to read. He'd seen more death than most men twice his age, and still carried the face of someone who wanted to be good but had forgotten how. "I never wanted to be an outlaw," he said, eyes locked on the flames. "But the world don't leave much room for a boy like me to become anything else." I reached across and touched his hand, rough as tree bark. He didn't pull away. There was a silence then, the kind that makes you realize you've already gone too far to turn back. The kind that presses on your chest and whispers, "This is real now." He kissed me that night, not like a thief, but like a man who thought he was kissing salvation. Slow, careful, like he didn't know if he deserved it. And I let him. I didn't flinch, didn't run. I kissed him back like I'd been waiting my whole life for that moment. Maybe I had. I knew I was carving a canyon between me and my father. Every step I took toward Jesse was a step away from everything Pa had raised me to be. But I couldn't stop, wouldn't, because Jesse bled like a man, loved like a man, and I I was done pretending I didn't feel it. But out here, love don't come without a price. The West don't care for poetry. It chews up soft things and spits them out meaner than before. And it never forgives a daughter who walks in the shadow of an outlaw, especially not when that outlaw's face is about to appear on every wall in town. Especially not when the manhunt is getting closer. I should have said goodbye that night. Should have ended it. Should have ridden home and locked the door and prayed the hunger out of me. But instead, I stayed, pressed my body against his, listened to his breath, and let the world fall away. It was foolish, it was dangerous, and it was already too late. Because once you've tasted that kind of love, you don't just walk away. You ride into fire for it. If you had to choose between the blood that raised you and the hands that held you through your darkest nights, which would you betray? Would you sit across from your father at breakfast and lie with a steady voice, knowing the man you love is sleeping beneath cottonwood trees just beyond the ridge? Would you risk a man's noose to feel one more kiss? I did. The days grew hotter, and so did the whispers. You could feel them crawling through town like snakes under the porch, quiet but venomous. Mrs. Talbot saw me coming out of the canyon one morning with wind-blown hair and dust on my skirt. She told her husband. He told the barber, and the barber, God help him, told my father while he was getting a trim and talking about how much worse the outlaws were getting. Pa didn't say much at first, but I saw it in his jaw, locked tight like a bear trap. Saw it in the way he started watching me more, the way he stopped letting me ride out alone, and when he finally spoke, it cut deeper than any bullet ever could. You got secrets, Carolyn? No, sir. You look me in the eye and say that again. I couldn't. I stared down at my boots like the coward I swore I'd never be. And Pa, he just stood there, silent as stone. Then he turned and left like he didn't want to know the truth. But he already did. That evening, Jessie didn't show at the spot by the creek. I waited till the moon had climbed halfway across the sky. No footsteps, no whistle, no voice in the dark. I started panicking, heart beating so loud it drowned out the crickets. I thought maybe he'd run. Maybe he'd left without saying goodbye. But then I heard it, the sharp cry of a hawk overhead. It was our signal, the one he used when he didn't want to speak out loud. I followed the sound and found him crouched behind the rocks, pistol in hand, eyes scanning the ridge. "They're close," he said. "Your daddy's hunting me." I wanted to deny it, wanted to scream he wouldn't, but Jessie's face told me the truth. He'd seen this kind of chase before. He knew how it ended. Not in trials, in dirt. "They got men combing the valley," he said. "Dogs, too. It's only a matter of time." And I cracked, right there in the dark, with cactus shadows stretching long across the land. I broke, because I knew what was coming. I knew Jessie wouldn't let himself be taken alive. I knew Pa wouldn't hesitate to shoot. And I was caught between two men who'd kill each other, both thinking they were protecting me. I begged Jessie to run, to head for the border, to leave that night and never look back. He stared at me, quiet as always, and then said, "And what about you?" I couldn't answer, because I didn't know. Could I leave this place? Could I leave Ma's grave, my childhood home, the memories, the pain, the porch swing that still creaked when the wind blew just right? Could I leave Pa, angry, broken Pa, who still polished my mother's wedding ring every Sunday before church? Love makes you selfish. It also makes you brave. I held Jesse's face in my hands and whispered, "Take me with you." His eyes burned like coals, not with excitement, with sorrow. "You'd give it all up." "For you? Yes." He kissed me like it was the last time. Maybe deep down, we both knew it was. The next morning, Dry Creek awoke to the sound of horses thundering across the main road. Dust clouds rose like ghosts. Pa had gathered a posse, 6 men, rifles ready, blood in their mouths. They said Jesse Klein had been spotted near Eagle Rock less than 10 miles out. They were going after him, hard and fast. And my father, he stood in the center of it all, hand resting on his revolver like it was just another limb. He looked straight at me as he mounted his horse. His eyes didn't ask, they accused. "You knew," he said, and I didn't deny it. He rode off without another word. I stood on the porch, fists clenched, heart shattering in my chest, wondering if I'd ever see either man alive again. The desert doesn't forgive the curious, and it sure as hell don't forgive a girl who falls in love with the wrong kind of man. But I'd made my choice. I just didn't know yet what it was going to cost. If you had to choose between seeing the one you love hang, or watching the man who raised you become the one who ties the rope, what would you do? I stood there, barefoot on the porch, feeling the wood splinters bite into my skin like punishment. The posse's dust hadn't even settled when I knew what I had to do. Run, not away, toward Jesse, toward danger, toward the fire I'd set without even realizing I'd struck the match. I saddled my horse without a second thought, hands shaking, heart pounding like war drums. Every mile felt like a prayer and a sin rolled into one. The sun was high when I reached the gulch near Eagle Rock, the place Jesse and I used to talk about as a last resort, a dead man's canyon, narrow and crooked, where even the wind got lost. That's where I found him, not hiding, waiting. His coat was slung over a rock, his gun loaded, his eyes tired. "I figured you'd come," he said, not smiling. "They're close," I told him. 6 riders. My father's leading them." He nodded. I know. There was no panic in him, no desperation, just a quiet acceptance, the kind that settles over a man who's run too long and stopped pretending the ending was ever going to be peaceful. "I can help you get out," I said. "I know a path through the ravine. You can lose them. Start over." Jesse walked to me, slow and heavy, like the words he was about to say were chained to his soul. "I don't run from your father," he whispered. "Not 'cause I'm proud, not 'cause I want to die, but because if I run, I take you with me. And Caroline, I won't let you carry that weight." I couldn't breathe. He touched my face, calloused fingers gentle like a lullaby. "If I go, I want you to stay. Stay and live. Not for me, for you." "You think I can live in a world where you're dead?" I said, voice cracking. "You'll survive. You're stronger than me." "No," I said. "I'm just better at pretending." We heard it then, distant hoofbeats. Closer, closer. Jesse looked to the ridge. "It's time." I wanted to scream, to drag him onto the horse, to beg him, fight him, hit him if I had to. But I didn't. Because love doesn't beg. Not when it knows it's already taken too much. He pressed something into my palm. A chain. A tiny silver locket. "I stole this when I was 15, he said. "From a girl's vanity in Kansas. First thing I ever took that didn't make me feel proud. I want you to have it." I didn't even open it. Just clutched it to my chest and whispered, "I love you." "I know," he said. "That's what scares me." Then he kissed me, and I knew it would be the last time. I hid behind the rocks as the posse thundered into the gulch. Pa's voice rang out sharp and hard, echoing like a death sentence. "Jesse Klein, drop your weapon and step forward." Jesse stood tall, alone. No hands raised, no white flag. "Sheriff," he called out, "I ain't gonna fight you, but I ain't gonna run neither." Pa's horse stomped and snorted, sensing the tension. "You hurt my daughter." "No," Jesse said, "I loved her." A pause. "And then I saw it." My father's hand moved toward his gun. "Don't!" I screamed, stepping out from the rocks. Every rifle snapped toward me like I'd walked into a battlefield blind. "Caroline!" Pa barked. "Get back!" "I won't," I said, standing between them. "If you shoot him, you'll have to go through me." The silence was unbearable, the kind that shakes mountains and freezes rivers. Then Pa dismounted, slow, heavy, like a man who'd just aged 20 years in one breath. He looked at Jesse, then at me. "I raised you better than this," he said. "No," I whispered. "You raised me strong, and strong means choosing love, even when it hurts." Pa looked at Jesse again. Then he holstered his gun, turned his back, and said nothing. The other men looked around, confused, waiting, but no one made a move. Finally, my father spoke. "You've got one night. Tomorrow, there'll be no warnings, no mercy. You ride out and don't ever come back." And then he walked away, just like that. The sun dipped behind the hills. The wind picked up, cold and bitter. I turned to Jesse, tears spilling, heart aching with a kind of joy that felt too sharp to hold. But he didn't smile, didn't touch me. "You heard him," he said softly. "One night. That night, we lay side by side under the stars. No promises, no plans, just skin and breath, and the ache of goodbye wrapped in the silence of love that never had a place to grow. And when dawn broke, he was gone. No letter, no footprints, only the locket still warm in my hand. If you had to carry the weight of someone's name in silence for the rest of your life, would you do it, just to keep their memory safe? Would you spend your days pretending to be whole, while part of you still rides the horizon with a man the world calls a criminal, but you once called home? I still remember the morning he left. The air was dry and sharp, like it knew what had been taken. The sky was pale, empty of color, like it too was grieving. I woke up alone, lying in the patch of grass we'd laid our heads on. His coat was gone. His scent was fading. The fire had long since turned to ash. He didn't say goodbye. Didn't need to. We'd already said everything with our silence, and I suppose that's the way it always ends with people like us. No rings, no promises, just a name that echoes long after the horses are gone. I rode back to Dry Creek with sand in my teeth and salt in my eyes. Pa didn't look at me when I passed him on the porch, and I didn't stop. Because how do you look a man in the face when he let your heart live by sparing the one who broke his law? A week later, the rumors started again. Jesse Klein spotted outside Tucson. Jesse Klein robbing a rail shipment near Yuma. Jesse Klein riding with a new gang near the border. Maybe it was true. Maybe it wasn't. But the stories never said anything about him hurting anyone. They said he took what he needed, that he disappeared before bullets flew, that he didn't ride for glory anymore. He rode like a ghost, quiet and fast. And in the quiet corners of my mind, I liked to think maybe he was still wearing the chain I gave him. Maybe every time he touched it, he remembered me, remembered that for one moment in a long, violent life, he'd been seen as something more than just an outlaw. I stayed in Dry Creek, opened a schoolhouse, married a man who was kind, gentle, safe. A man who never asked why I flinched at gunshots or stared too long at the sunset. We had a life, a quiet one. But love? Real love? That kind only happens once. When my father died, I buried him beside my mother under the big oak tree behind the church. The preacher said a few words. The townsfolk stood in silence. And I stood at the head of that grave and thanked the man who once chose mercy over vengeance, who let me keep the one thing he'd spent his whole life fighting: hope. A year after the funeral, I received a package. No name, no note. Inside was a silver ring and a scrap of cloth, embroidered with the letter C. I knew no one else would have. I wept for hours that night. Not because I was sad, but because love like that doesn't die. It just changes shape. Sometimes I still ride out to the canyon, the place where we met, where the bandit king bled like a man and kissed like he'd never known peace. I sit there with the wind brushing my hair and the silence wrapping around me like old skin. And I ask myself again and again, if you had to choose between love and honor, between your past and your heart, what would you do? I don't know the right answer, but I know what I chose. And I'd choose him again, even now, even knowing what it cost, because in the end, some loves don't need a future. They just need to be remembered. And I remember everything